Hi there. Thank you for watching our basic teacher training on-demand video. I'm Erin Such, an education consultant and your tour guide through the teacher mode of the program. In this training, you'll learn all the ins and outs of the teacher mode, and at the end of the session, you'll be able to add students to the program, enroll them into courses, and monitor their progress. We'll also take a peek at the student mode of the program. Now let's get started by logging in as a teacher. Once you get logged in, you'll see your home page. Now let me give you a quick little tour. We'll start at the top. I want to talk about this new features button. Anytime you see this button blink at you, it lets you know that we've released or are going to release some new features into the program. So you can see here that we have a new student experience coming soon, and it gives some screenshots of what your students have to look forward to. You could also choose to see more details. This will take you to our features page, where you'll get the full release notes for that release or upcoming release. You'll also be able to look back at any of our previous release notes. So that new features button, that's a biggie. Make sure you check that each Monday when you log in, because we typically release new features over the weekend. When you click on My Preferences, if you have the permission to change the appearance of your site or your password, that's where you'll be able to do so. You can change the theme. That's the color scheme. There's a couple of different colors that you could choose from. This just allows you to personalize your experience whenever you're working in the program. You could also change your background. And I don't have the permission to change my password, but if I did, there would be an additional button right here that said password, and I could update my password. And then the logout link, I think that one's pretty self-explanatory. This navigational tab bar, that's going to be your means of transportation through the program. And we tried to make it as intuitive as we possibly could. When you're ready to add new students to the program, you will click on the Students tab. When you want to take a look at how they're performing on their courses, then you're going to take a look at the gradebook. If you need to run reports, the Reports tab. Now let's take a look at the body of the homepage. It's kind of broken up into a quadrant system. So this top left-hand corner, this will have your welcome message and your message of the day. These have been put into the program by the admin for your site. You might also see the number of concurrent student licenses. That means how many students can be online and working at the same time. So if you have 10 concurrent student licenses, then 10 students could be online and working at the same time. You could have any number of students who are actually enrolled on your site, but only 10 could be working simultaneously. As soon as number 10 logs off, number 11 could get logged in. Below that, you're going to see the calendar, which will show your school days versus no school days for your school or your district or your parish. These again are set up by the admin on your site. In the top right-hand corner, you're going to see the actions box. Now, this is really important for you guys as teachers who monitor students, because this is your to-do list. And anytime a student completes an activity that requires your attention, it's going to show up here. And the goal for you is to clear this out every single day, because that's what's going to ensure your students' grades are always up to date and accurate. Now, that's something that we're going to come back to, and I'll show you how to clear out all of those actions after we take a look at the student mode of the program. And down in the bottom right-hand corner, you have your new messages window. Anytime you receive a new message from a user in the program, it will appear here. You can double-click the message to open it up, where you'll be able to reply to it, forward it on to another user in the program, or archive the message. All right, let's get started by heading over to the Students tab. Now, before we dive into the Students tab, I just want to give you a quick heads up. There might be things I show you today that you won't be able to do when you log in as a teacher. Depending on the policies and procedures that have been set up by the admin for your account, You might or might not have the ability to add new students to the program, edit their profile, or enroll them into courses. So double check with your admin to see what permissions have been assigned to you. There are two types of teacher roles in the program. There's a super teacher and a teacher. And they honestly have nothing to do with your teaching ability because we do know that you are all, in fact, super teachers. It simply means who you see in the program. A super teacher will see every single student who's enrolled on your site. So if you are a school who is sharing a site with multiple other campuses, that means that if you are a super teacher, not only are you going to see the students who you monitor, you'll also see students from other campuses when you click on the Students tab. If you're a teacher in the program, you'll just see the students who you monitor. So your list will definitely be significantly smaller. Now, if you are a super teacher and you choose just to view the students who you monitor, you can toggle on this view drop down to My Students, and that will shrink up your list and show you only the students who you monitor in the program. To add a new student to the program, you'll click the Create Student button. Then you'll fill out the form. You'll put in the student's first name, last name, and assign them a username. Be sure that you take a look at the way that your site is setting up usernames for students and try to be consistent. Most often it's the student's first initial of their first name followed by their last name, but some other campuses use student ID or student's first name, dot, and then last name. So just try to be consistent. Then you'll give the student a password. The passwords have to be at least 6 characters long. They can be numbers, letters, or a combination of both. They just have to be 6 characters long. Then you'll put it in one more time. Student ID and campus ID. These fields are optional. You don't have to put anything in here, but it's going to be a great way for you to sort and filter based upon groups of students, especially if you're a campus who is using the program or sharing the site with multiple other campuses. That campus ID field will come in very handy if you're using it at the elementary and then the high school and then also the middle school. You could designate the different campuses and it helps you to sort and only see that campus. You're also going to be able to run reports based on that field as well. Now, if you're a school who's only using the site in one location, then be creative. Don't feel like you have to put the campus ID in there. A lot of our campuses are using these fields as ways to differentiate between groups of students. So sometimes they're putting in their graduation year. Sometimes they're putting in if they are a credit recovery student, or perhaps a night school student, or a virtual student. So again, this is something that you'll want to check to see how your site is setting up the student ID and campus ID and be consistent. The next item is the default term. Now, I don't want you to feel like you have to be too definitive here. It simply means when you go to put this student into a course, this will be the term that appears first. When you go to enroll a student into a course, you'll always have the option to select a term. So that's why I say don't feel like you have to be too definitive here. You could either select the school term. These are terms that have been established by the admin. You could create a student's or a custom term for that student. Maybe if it's a senior who wants to graduate early and they're going to have an abbreviated schedule, then you could put in a custom start and end date for that student. Or you could choose at enrollment. And basically what this term will do is set up the pacing schedule for the student. So they know exactly what they need to do every single day in each course in order to finish those courses by the end date of the term. The next set of items that we see here are the thresholds. These thresholds have been established by your admin. And so you can see that they are all defaulted to whatever the admin had in place. The first threshold is the CRX Pass Threshold. And anytime you see the letters CRX, I want you to think of them as our code letters for credit recovery mode. It's a mode in the program where the student will take a pretest at the beginning of every single unit. If they achieve the threshold on the pretest, and in this case that would mean an 80 or higher, they test out of that unit's worth of content and they move on to the next unit's pretest. If they're not successful on the pretest, the program will automatically assign all of the activities in the unit for the student to complete. So this CRX Pass Threshold only applies to the pretest for a course that is assigned in CRX mode or credit recovery mode. This CRX Pass Threshold can work hand in hand with FlexCRX. FlexCRX is an option or a feature that can run in conjunction with a course in credit recovery mode. If this box is activated, then when a student is not successful on the pretest, they fail that pretest, the program will only assign lessons for the questions the student answered incorrectly. So it will automatically skip the lessons for the questions the student answered correctly. So it really helps to expedite a student through a course if they're able to show mastery on certain concepts. That FlexCRX, when it's activated, would automatically activate the Flex Skipped. Flex Skipped is a feature that will automatically skip questions on assessments that relate to any skipped lessons. So if you're a teacher and you decide to skip a lesson for whatever reason, then any questions related to that lesson would be skipped on the quizzes and the test for a course that's running in normal mode. Now, for a course that's running in credit recovery mode, this feature will only work on the quizzes. In other words, it's not going to skip any questions on the test at the end of the unit. And the reason why we do that is so that you have a really great academic comparison between the pretest and the post-test. Now let's go back up to the other thresholds and talk through those. The first is the lesson pass threshold. Again, these have been put in place by your admin. It goes hand in hand with the number of attempts. This max lesson attempts is the automation in the program. The student is going to have 2 opportunities to achieve a 70% on their lessons. If they do, fantastic. They move on to the next assignment in the unit. If they don't achieve a 70% on their second attempt, then they take the grade that they earned on that last attempt and move on to the next assignment in the unit. Now, even though we say that this is the max, that's just the max for automation. So you as the teacher always have the freedom to reassign a lesson, a quiz, or a test, or parts of it to a student if you feel like they have or they need another opportunity to be successful. Again, these have been defaulted back to what was set up by your admin. The block lesson progress, you'll also see this under the quizzes and test as well. If you activate this box here, if the student is not able to achieve a 70% in 2 attempts, the program will block them from moving forward in the course until you, the teacher, intervenes. Now, you can do this here at the individual level for a student, or you could even do it at the course level as well. The quiz threshold and the number of attempts will be listed here for you as well, and the test. Now, if your admin has given you permission to personalize a student's thresholds, you would be able to check the box next to personalized thresholds. You'll notice that each of these fields now I'm able to edit them. So if the student has an IEP and they have a reduced threshold, or perhaps they're allowed more attempts on activities, I can make those adjustments here as necessary for the student at the individual level. I just need to make sure I check this box. If you don't have the permission to personalize thresholds, you'll see the word disabled right here next to the box. After the thresholds, you'll see the weighting scale. There are 4 activities that make up Odysseyware units: lessons, projects, quizzes, and tests. These again have been set up by your admin, and they just need to add up to 100. This is how the student's unit average is calculated. And then all of the unit averages are averaged together to give the student their overall course score. Again, if you need to personalize these at the student level, you can check the box next to personalize weights and make the appropriate adjustments. The next set of items we see are the permissions. These again have been set up by the admin. So anything that the admin elected to turn off will show as disabled. Anything the admin activated would show with a check. If you didn't want to provide the student with that permission, you could uncheck the box. Now let me go through each of these really quickly with you so that you know if your admin has elected to activate them, what they will do for your student. These first 2, the student review test and quiz and the student answer key, these go hand in hand. They work in the same fashion. The first one applies to the test and quiz. The second one applies to lessons. And if you were to activate these boxes, when a student completes any one of these activities, a lesson, quiz, test, they would be able to immediately go back into the activity and see their performance, as well as the answer key for each of those assignments. So, positives of this permission might be that the student's getting immediate feedback. They know what they got right and wrong and what they should have selected. Potential negatives of these permissions being activated, I think anytime you're giving the student an answer key, you're also providing them an opportunity to share those answers with a friend. So, if your student's working in a virtual setting, that may not really apply. But if they're working in a lab setting, that might be something to consider whether or not you want to leave that permission on for your students. When it comes to lessons, your student will always be able to go back into a lesson to review the content. So if they're studying for a quiz or a test, they can go back into a lesson and look at the content for each of those lessons. They'll also see their performance on the questions at the end of those lessons. So again, they'll know which ones they got right and wrong. They just won't have the answer key. So I personally like to have these disabled for my students because if they want to know how they performed on a quiz or a test, the specifics, because they're going to know the grade, but if they want to know what they got right and wrong, then I encourage them to come see me. Now the enable grading view, this would allow students who have not achieved the threshold on lessons, when they get looped back into that lesson, they're going to see their performance on the questions. So they'll know which ones they got right and which ones they got wrong, and they'll just be able to focus their attention on those questions that they answered incorrectly. Now again, this permission has positives and negatives, so I want to make you aware of both. The positives of this are that it almost serves like a guided practice, or think of it like a student turns in an assignment, you grade it, hand it back to the student and say, make the corrections and turn it back in. It kind of has that same feel. It's a fantastic permission for students who receive special services. On the downside of this permission, you might have a handful of kiddos that figure out how they could use this to work the system. And we all know that these kiddos do exist, so I want to make you aware of how they might do this. If I'm one of these students and I figure out how it works, on my first attempt of my lesson, I'm just going to go through and select the first answer choice for every question. And then when I get looped back in, I know which ones I got right and wrong. And so for those wrong ones, I might select the second answer choice. And depending on how many attempts you are allowing your student to take on lessons, they could potentially achieve the threshold without even reading the content. So I always say, you know your students better than anybody. You know who would benefit from a permission like this. You know who would abuse it, and you could award it accordingly. Change passwords is pretty straightforward. That's just going to allow your student to change their own password. You, as the teacher, would always be able to reset a student's password if you have the ability to edit their profile. Again, that's another permission that needs to be turned on for you by the admin. Randomized questions, that's just going to switch up the order of questions on all of the lessons, quizzes, and tests. Allow background and theme selection. These two are similar to what I showed you earlier with the My Preferences link. That will allow the student to kind of personalize their experience. The display planner will show the student exactly where they stand in every single one of their courses. So they'll know what's overdue. They'll know what's coming up for them, what assignments are open and available for them to work on right now. It also provides them with their overall average for each course they are currently enrolled in. And you're probably saying, why would I ever want to turn that off? Well, because it shows students the number of activities that are overdue, sometimes that can be a little discouraging for kiddos. And so if you find that students are starting to shut down or be discouraged by that number, you could come here and turn off the planner for the kiddo. Allow message send would allow that student to send messages to their teacher and reply to a message from the admin or other teachers who might have messaged them. Your students will not be able to message each other in the program. And then the last set of permissions down here are for Writer. Writer is a writing process tool. Its whole goal is to encourage your students to edit and revise their written work prior to submitting it for grading. There are two settings that can be activated for Writer. The first is spelling and grammar. This works just like the spelling and grammar check on a word processing application. So when the student submits an essay, they will see red and blue underlines under some words. So the red represents the spelling errors. The blue represents the grammar errors or suggestions. If the student right-clicks on either of those red or blue lines, they will get the suggestions for the correction. And then the other setting is scoring. This scoring element provides students with some feedback about how they're writing. It lets them know if they have met or exceeded the required number of words for the essay. It lets them know if they are writing at their expected grade level, their readability level, whether or not they're staying on topic. And based upon that feedback, we're really hoping your student will edit and revise what they've written so that you get their best effort versus their first attempt. Once you've completed this form, you will click on Save. And I know you're probably saying to yourself, man, that is a long form. But honestly, if I take you back up to the top, really where you're going to be focusing your attention is right here on the components that you see. The first, last, username, password, whether or not you want to put in the student ID and campus ID, and the default term. Everything beyond that point will be defaulted back to whatever your admin set up. So you'll only need to make adjustments here if you need to individualize or personalize the student's profile. Let's talk through the remaining items here on the Students tab. Not only can you create new student accounts, you can also import students, up to 500 at a time. If you click the Import Students button, it'll bring up the directions for you. You'll first download a template, fill it out, then you'll save that file and browse for it, and then go through the process of adding those students to the program. It'll save you some time if you're adding a large group of students. That way you don't have to do it individually one by one. Now we're going to start over here on the very left-hand side. When a student is online, their icon will be illuminated blue. Let's do a quick search for Sally Sue, because I know that she's online. See, her icon is blue. That's how I know she's online and working. If for whatever reason I need to log her off manually, perhaps to free up a license or whatever the case may be, you can just simply click on the icon. It will ask if you want to log the student out. And now when Sally Sue tries to navigate around, it will bring her back to the login page. The next column, login enabled. This lets you know if the student's access to your site is turned on. If their login is enabled, that means they can log on to your site. If their login is disabled, they don't have access just temporarily. So maybe I need to reserve my licenses just for my high school students. So what I might do is run a quick search for just my middle school students, batch select all of them, and disable their logins. That's going to temporarily turn off their access to the program. They're still active users, and it's very easy for me to enable their logins again. I'll just batch select them and click the enable login button. It's easy as that. And that's one great way to use that campus ID. See how fast it was and easy it was for me to sort and get just a specific group of students. Under status, there are 3 user statuses in the program. The first is active. These are for all of your active students who are working in the program. We also have on hold. Now, I don't have any on hold kiddos here, but if I did, it simply means the student isn't working in the program right now for an extended time period. So maybe it's a kiddo who was reassigned to an alternative campus for a short period of time, and then they will be returning. So in that meantime, they will be placed on hold. Or maybe it's a student who needed credit recovery during their 9th grade year. They did great during their 10th and 11th grade year, but come their senior year, they need to take another course for credit recovery. In that case, they would be placed on hold for their 10th and 11th grade year. It essentially freezes the student's profile. Then we have the archive status. Now think of the archive as your virtual file cabinet. You are never able to delete a student profile. It's simply archived. And an archived user status is for a student who will never use the program again. Let me reiterate that never with big, bold, capital letters, underlined 3 times, flashing lights all around. Never use the program. So think graduating seniors, students who have moved away and have been away for a year or more. Those would be good candidates for archiving because it is a permanent status change. And once you change a student's status to archived, it initiates a grace period that has been set up by your admin. And once that grace period window has expired, the status sticks, which means you're not going to be able to bring that student back to an active or on hold status. You're not going to be able to reuse the username again, and you're only going to be able to access records for this student on the reports tab. And you'll be able to see every course the student was enrolled in. You'll be able to see how they performed on every single activity. You'll have grades for every lesson, quiz, project, and test. The only thing you're not going to see for an archived course or an archived enrollment is how the student answered each individual question. Now, one question always comes up, Erin, I accidentally archived a student. My grace period has expired, and now that student needs to take a course. What do I do? Well, it's not really a big deal. All you'll do is just create a new student profile for him or her and give them a new username. And then, technically, if you needed to, you could go back and look at the courses the student took. You could even pick the student up and let them start right where they left off. So even though we say it's a permanent status change, there's always ways we can work around things like that. So that's the archive status. Under student ID, campus ID, first, last, and username, these are smart search fields, and you've already seen me use them under the campus ID and the student's name. So if I'm looking for Sally Sue, I just need to start typing her name, and the list would automatically filter to just show me her account. I can edit her profile by clicking the edit link here. And then I can edit anything for the student's account. I can change the student's user status to either on hold or archived. There's a shortcut for archived I'll show you in just a moment. You can change the student's password. If they forget their password, you could reset it for them and make any other adjustments as necessary. So maybe if they're graduating from middle school and need to go to the high school campus ID, you could plug that in and make the adjustments to their thresholds and weighting scale and their permissions. Basically everything we covered when we created the new student account. The last thing I want to show you here, actually there's two more things I want to show you here. Here are the shortcuts for archiving students. Remember how I said some campuses use student ID or campus ID as graduation years? So maybe at the end of this school year, you're going to plug in 2014 and you'll batch select all of your students who actually graduated and walked across the stage. You could put a check mark in each of the boxes next to their name and then click on archive. And you could archive all of those students at one time, which is going to be a big time saver instead of going into each individual student profile by clicking on their edit link or the edit button next to their name. Now, the last button I do want to show you in the program, or I'm sorry, on this student tab, is the Goto button. And it's a way for you to navigate through the program specifically for that student. So the Goto button next to student 8 would take me to all of the assignment alerts, which we'll talk about a little bit later for student 8. If I want to put student 8 into courses, I could select the course enrollment link. If I wanted to see how student 8 was performing in their courses and take a look at the gradebook, I could click the gradebook link. And I could also see if student 8 has turned in any assignments that require my attention, hence the action required. So it's a way for you to navigate through the program specifically for an individual student. Well, now it's time for us to take our newly created students and enroll them into some courses. And we're going to do that on the Course Enrollment tab. Now, again, this is going to be another item that you may or may not have permission to do. So on the Course Enrollment tab, you're always going to be able to see students and you'll be able to see the courses they are enrolled in. So if I run a search for Sally, I'm just going to start typing her name in the student box, select her name from the drop-down menu and click on search. All of the results will appear underneath this bar that will run across the middle of your screen. Now, for those of you that do not have the permission to enroll students into courses, you'll just see this table. So you'll know each of the individual courses the student is enrolled in, but you won't have the ability to add students to a course. And to do that, we are going to click on this Add Enrollment button. Now we'll start by selecting a subject and then a course. Now, anytime you see a course that ends in 100, like these here at the bottom, 300 through 800, that's equivalent to the grade level. So this is language arts for 8th grade, language arts for 3rd grade. Anytime you see the Roman numerals like English 1 through 4, those are the high school level courses, freshman year through senior year. If you see CCSS, that designates Common Core State Standards. Our English courses for high school, as well as Algebra 1, 2, and Geometry, have recently been rewritten, so they are aligned to the Common Core State Standards. Then you can decide what course term you want to assign to the student. The high school core content courses have already been divided into semesters for you. So if the student only needs one semester or the other, you could select that, or you could enroll the student into the full term. For status, you can either leave it as active if you're ready for the student to begin working in the course immediately, or you could mark it as on hold if you want this to be a future enrollment. Your name would automatically appear here as the teacher who will monitor the student in the program. That means that you're going to receive the actions for the student. If they ever complete an activity that requires your attention, you're going to be the one who has sent the notification. Under term, this is where we'll set the pacing schedule or the time frame for when we want the student to complete the course. That term will create the pacing guide for the student. So again, you can either select the terms that have been created by the admin for your program. If you created a student term on their profile, you could use that one as well. Or you could put in your own custom start and end date for this course. I'm just going to use the spring term. Now, under enrollment settings, you're going to decide if you want the course to run in credit recovery mode or not. This setting is the only one you cannot change once you add the enrollment. So you want to make sure you decide if you want the student to take a pretest at the beginning of every unit, check the box. If you don't, if you want them to start at Unit 1, Lesson 1, then you'll leave the box unchecked. You can decide whether or not you'd like your students' tests to be blocked. You could also block quizzes if you choose to. If your student is working in a lab setting or on campus with you, I always recommend you block tests for the core content courses because you want to ensure that those students are taking those courses in a monitored and proctored environment. And I said core content courses, I would do it for electives too. There are a few courses like our CART courses, our Common Core Assessment and Remediation Tool. For those, I wouldn't necessarily block tests because the student is taking a lot of tests on those. But for the standard courses, I highly recommend blocking tests. Again, you'll get an action item in your actions box, and you'll just have to unblock the test for the student. That way you know when they are taking the assessment, you know that they're not taking it at home and perhaps getting some outside assistance. Everything on the remainder of this form will be familiar to you. We have the thresholds that you can personalize, again, here at the course level, and the weighting scale, and then the writer settings. So again, it might seem like a lengthy form, but you're focusing your attention on just this top portion through the top portion of the enrollment settings. And then everything beyond block quizzes will come in as a default, and you'll only need to make adjustments if the student needs some personalization of their thresholds or their weighting scale for that particular course. When you've completed the form, you'll click on Add Enrollment. You'll get a little notification that the enrollment was added successfully, and then the course will be added to the student's schedule. So here's that English 2 course that I just enrolled my student into. Now you're able to edit an enrollment if you need to. You're able to change the teacher who will monitor the student. You can change the status of the enrollment, but I'll show you a shortcut for this in just a moment. You could also decide, hey, you know that blocking test thing? That didn't work out so well. And you could uncheck it. Or if you decide, hey, I really do need that, you can come back here and activate it. And you could make adjustments to the student's thresholds and weighting scale. Now let's talk through the other buttons on this screen here. The Activate, Place on Hold, and Archive. These are to change the status of the enrollment, and they work the same way that the students, their user statuses are, or they're set up in the same way. So the archive is for when a student completes a course. So you would check the box next to the course, click on the archive button, and then you're going to select a reason code, whether it was complete, incomplete, the student dropped the course, or it was a void enrollment. Maybe I enrolled them in English 2 and what they really needed was English 1. Or maybe I enrolled them in English 2 in credit recovery mode and I really needed it to be in normal mode. Then I would just select the void reason code. Now, please get in the habit of selecting the appropriate reason code because down the road, you'll be able to run reports based upon courses that are archived and with a reason code of complete. That's a way for you to keep track of how many credits your students are earning in the program. And it's a great way to keep track of the successfulness or how successful your program is. And you could do the same thing to place a course on hold, or if a course was either on hold or archived and you're still within your grace period, then you could follow the same process to activate it again. This last button over here, the reschedule button, is probably one of my favorite features because it will reset a student's pacing schedule. If your student falls behind for whatever reason, perhaps they were out sick for an extended amount of time and they were not able to work from home, when they come back, you could batch select all of their courses or just a handful of courses and reschedule them. And when you reschedule these courses, you're going to select either the same term or a new term. You could put in the student's term, or you could give them a custom term. And what the program will do is take the remaining activities in the course and the number of working days in the term, or the remaining working days in the term, and evenly or redistribute the coursework. So the student will not have any more overdue work. They might just have a few more assignments to do each day to get them back on track so they can finish the course by the end date that you have in place. Such a cool feature. Or let's say you get to the end of the school year and a student hasn't finished a course and you want to give them some time in summer school. You could reschedule them to a summer school term, or you could say, you know what? I'm going to give you 2 more weeks to complete this course. And you could give them an additional 2 weeks and it would reset their pacing schedule, giving them new assignments that they need to do each day. So very cool feature. I love that reschedule. A few more things that I want to cover with you before we move on to the gradebook. Probably one of the biggest questions that I get whenever people are trying to enroll students into courses is that they try to put all of the information into this search box up here. And really, you just need to be very general. Just run a search for the student's name. Because if you start plugging in all of the information here for a course or for an enrollment that doesn't exist yet, maybe they need to take geometry. It runs a search and it says no enrollments were found. And they ask me and say, Erin, what happened? I'm trying to put my student into geometry and nothing's happening. It's saying no enrollments were found. It's because this is a search box. And technically, you just put in a search for an enrollment that doesn't exist yet. So be very, very general. Just plug in the student's name. When you're ready to put them into a course, click on Add Enrollment. Now, if you have several students to put into the same course, once one student is enrolled, let's use Algebra 1 for an example, because I can see Sally Sue's enrolled in Algebra 1. Once one student is enrolled, you can run a search for the course. So I'm going to select View by Course, and I'm going to select Algebra 1, run my search. Now I can see all of my students who are enrolled in Algebra 1, and if I need to continue adding new students to this enrollment or to this course, when I click on Add Enrollment, instead of having to select the subject and the course, now I only need to select the student. And I could go through and complete the rest of the form. But that'll actually save you a few clicks. And if you're having to enroll several students into the same course, that will come in handy because then you're not going to have to search for each individual student. You'll be able to have the course already up and you'll just add the enrollment here one after the next. So that'll be a good time saver for you. Okay, we're ready to move on. Let's head to the gradebook. Now, the gradebook tab looks really similar to the course enrollment tab, doesn't it? It has that big search box, and again, to look for a student, all you need to do is start typing in their name. Select them from the drop-down list and click Search. Again, the results will appear below the bar that runs across the middle of the screen. And what you'll see are each of the courses that your students are enrolled into. You'll also see their start and end date based on the term, the progress they have made in each of the courses with the percentage of completion, as well as the score that they've earned in each of their courses. This is the current average. And you can tell that in some of my courses, Sally Sue's not doing very well. And I just have to make a confession. I am Sally Sue. So let's first take a look at navigating the page. To open a course, you're going to click the plus sign next to the course title, and you'll see all of the units that make up the course. For each individual unit, you're able to skip whole units of content. You can see when the student started the course or that unit, when they've completed the unit, the progress they have made and the percentage complete, and their current average for the unit. Now you're probably saying, why would I want to skip whole units of content? Well, I was actually a BCIS teacher when I worked in the classroom, and during the first semester of BCIS, we didn't cover databases. We actually did that during the second semester. So that's something I could come in here and skip, and then the student would go straight from spreadsheets onto the course review and exam. And you're probably saying, okay, when you skip databases, what happened to those questions that might be related to databases on the exam, and they have been removed? This course works with that flex skipped feature. And so anytime I skip a lesson or anytime I skip a unit, any questions related to that content will be removed on the assessments. So that's a big yay. Now let's take a look at the unit itself. So again, I'm going to click the plus sign next to the unit title, and I can see all of the activities that make up the unit, all of the assignments. I'll see the title of the assignment, the status, whether it's been graded, if it's completed. This means that the student has completed the assignment, but there's some component of manual grading in there that I need to take care of. You will receive actions in your action box or notifications in your actions box whenever this occurs, and I'll show you how to grade those activities a little bit later in our session. So they'll show as completed here. They'll also be marked with an asterisk in the score. The status of assigned, these are the activities that are open and available for the student to work on. And when you see not started, these are things that are coming up for the student to complete. The student can't work on lesson 7 until they've completed lesson 6. The program forces them to work in a linear order with the exception of the projects, which is why you see this one assigned outside of that order. The projects the student can work on anytime throughout the unit. The next column is blocked, so you can choose to block an assignment that would keep the student from moving beyond that point until you have an opportunity to unblock it for them. So if they're working fast and feverishly through something and they're not completing the activities to your level of satisfaction, they're not meeting their threshold, you could block them, and then that way they can't work anymore until you intervene and maybe have a tutorial with them. You're going to see the due dates of each assignment, when the student started the assignment for the first time, when they submitted their last attempt, and the number of attempts that they have taken on that activity and the score that they've earned. So we've already talked about one of the key things that you can do here on the gradebook page or on the gradebook tab. There are 5. The first is that you are able to preview or review all student work. So I'll show you that in just a moment. So those are 2. You can also skip whole units of content, which you've seen how to do. You can skip individual assignments, which I'm about to show you. You can also skip individual questions if your admin gives you that permission, and I'll show you that as well. So let's take a look at reviewing an assignment that a student has completed. You're just going to click on the assignment title, and that'll bring you to the question view of the assignment. Now you can see the lesson if you want to by clicking on the Show Lesson button. You'll see all of the content that the student saw when they completed the lesson. So that's pretty cool. I'm going to hide the lesson again. And I want to let you know you're going to see this same screen several times throughout the training today. So whatever I show you here, you can do these tasks in those other locations and vice versa. What I show you on those screens, you can do here. So I'll make sure and bring your attention to it like, hey, this is what we saw on the gradebook. So reviewing a student's work, we know which questions they got right and wrong. See these questions, how they are green and they are at 100% and it says correct. It's great that it's color coded, so I know that they got these correct. For the ones that are red or pink, in this case, these are the questions the student answered incorrectly, and in this case, they left an essay blank. You'll also see yellow boxes as well. That represents partial credit, where the student earned partial credit for that question. Now, for each question, you can show the answer. Now, the student answered these correctly, so they're all going to be the question that the answer choice that the student selected, but I want to show you that you have that option there. Okay, so that is reviewing work. There's also another place that you can do this that I'll show you a little bit later on. Now, a great navigation tip. There is a Go-To button at the top of your screen. I'm sorry that it's hanging out just outside the area that I'm recording, but it's right above where my mouse is. This is a fantastic navigation tip. When you're looking at an assignment from the gradebook and you want to head back to the gradebook, click on Go To and click the gradebook link. If you go to previous, or if you hit the back arrow on your browser, it will recall the gradebook page, and you'll have to search for the student again, open up the course, and open up the unit. When you use Go To Gradebook, it will just show you all of the enrollments for the student, so it's a huge time saver. Okay, so we're back on the Gradebook tab. The next thing I want to show you is that you can preview work. So if I wanted to go take a look at the test down at the end of the unit, I would just click on the test title. Again, I have the question view, and I can see that there are 25 questions. I could go through each one. I could see the answer for each individual question. So that's a way for you to preview work before a student starts it. And I want to show you that you can skip individual questions. Again, this is something that your admin can turn on or off. And this is a great way for you to modify assessments for students. You know, sometimes they'll have an IEP where it'll say that they have a reduced number of questions on assessments. So you could come in here and skip these questions prior to the student completing the activity. You could also do this skip action after they've completed the activity. So if it's a permission that has been turned on by your admin, you can do it now or after the student completes the assignment. So we killed two birds with one stone on this one. We previewed an assignment and we skipped individual questions on assignments. The only other thing we really need to take a look at is how to skip individual assignments. So let's go back to the gradebook. So now I want to show you how to skip individual assignments. So under the status column, any assignment that you would like to skip and not be factored into the grading scale, you can just change the status from either completed, graded, assigned, or not started, and change it to skipped. Any questions related to this lesson will be skipped automatically on the quiz that follows, also on all of the course assessments as well, if that course does work with that flex skipped component. So it's as easy as that to skip assignments. So those are the 5 key things that I wanted to make sure to tackle with you. You can preview work. You can review work. You can skip whole units of content. You can skip individual assignments. And you can skip individual questions. And you can, of course, do a lot more here as well, but those are the 5 key things that you'll probably tackle while you're here. And while we're on the Gradebook tab, I want to show you how that Flex CRX component works for a course that a student is taking in credit recovery mode. So I'm going to open up Algebra 1 and open up Unit 1. Remember, in CRX mode or credit recovery mode, they're going to take a pretest first. In this case, the student failed it. They got a 32, they did not achieve the threshold, and so the program automatically assigned the student the activities or the assignments for the unit. With that Flex CRX component, do you remember that it's only going to assign the lessons for the questions the student answered incorrectly. So you can see here that some lessons have been skipped. So in these 32 points, the student was able to answer questions about lesson 3, 4, and 5 correctly, so the program skipped those lessons. Because this quiz quizzes the student on the bank of lessons directly above it, it automatically skipped that quiz as well. You can see that they also answered questions about absolute value correctly. So any questions related to absolute value have been skipped on this quiz. You can see that they're designated with these dark gray squares, and the status over here says skipped. Now let's go back to the gradebook. I want to show you the test at the end of the unit. So I'll open the test, and what we see is that none of the questions have been skipped. It only works on the quizzes for course and credit recovery mode. Remember, we do this so that you have a really good academic comparison between the pre-test and the post-test. Heading back to the gradebook one more time to wrap up that page. All right, the last thing I want to talk about with you here on the gradebook tab are the numbers of units in a course and how that can help you to determine the length or the number of credits the student will earn for the course. Typically, our high school full year courses will have anywhere between 10 to 13 units, like you see here for this Algebra 1 course. When a course has anywhere from 10 to 13 units, that lets you know that it's a full year course. If a course has 5 to 6 units, like this BCIS course, that lets you know that it's a semester-long course. And usually there's 5 units of content with unit test, and then potentially there's also a course review and exam. So that's just a good rule of thumb, but always check your course listing where they do break it down for you and let you know how many units make up the course, so you'll know how many credits to award the student. Okay, there's one more tab I want to show you before we move into the student mode of the program, and that's the Messages tab. The messaging system in the program is internal, so it only allows you to message other users in the program. When you come to the Messages tab, you'll see all messages that you've received from other users in the program or any that have been sent by the system notifying you of maybe a course is about to be archived or something like that. So when a message is bold, like we see here, this indicates one that I haven't read yet. And this is for a student when they ask for help on a question. And you'll understand what that means a little bit more in just a moment when we move into the student mode of the program. But I could double click the message to open it up. I could click the link to go answer the student's question, which they have typed here. I could forward this on to another teacher. I could archive this message or just close it. And that's what I'm going to do for right now because I want to make sure that I do take care of that and answer the student's help request. You can also batch select multiple messages, mark them as read or as unread if you want to leave them in your message box, or archive them. And that archive, again, is your virtual file cabinet. No message is ever deleted, so you always have a great track record of communication with other users in the program. So all of the messages that you have sent will be found here in the drop-down box. So these are all of the messages that I've sent out. These are the messages that have been sent to me. They are listed under archived. Now to send a new message, you're going to click the New Message button. Under contacts, you'll see all of the students, but you are also able to message the admin or other teachers. Now, if you're a teacher, you'll only see the students you monitor. If you're a super teacher, you're going to see every student on your site. So you can search for individual students if you want to. There's Sally Sue. I'm going to put in my subject and my message. Ooh, let me spell it correctly. And send it on its way. So it works very similarly to your email. It's as easy as that. Now I want to take you into the student mode of the program and give you a little tour of what your students see. I'm going to log out from the teacher mode and log back in as a student. The student homepage looks very much like ours. The primary difference is that where we had actions, they have assignments due. These are all of the activities from the grade book that have a status of assigned. So these are all of the lessons, quizzes, or tests that are open and available and ready for the student to work on. They could click on any of these activities and be taken right into that assignment to complete the work. On the new messages box, this is where they will receive new messages from their teachers or from the admin. Just like you, they'll double click the message to open it. There they can read the message, reply to it, forward it on to another teacher that monitors the student. They could archive it and close the message. Now let's look through the other tabs that your students have access to. The My Courses tab is very similar to the gradebook, where the student will see a listing of each of the courses they're enrolled in. If they click the triangle next to the course title, they will see all of the units. If they click the triangle next to the unit, they will see all of the assignments. This is where they're going to come to review their work, or if they need to study for a quiz or a test where they can come to review lessons. It will also tell them the grade that they've earned on activities. These little caution signs that the student will see, these let them know that these activities are things that you need to grade before they'll be able to review them and see their score that they earned. So anything that is blue and bold, the student has access to. So they can either review the work or they can go in and continue working on the next assignment. On the planner, this is the student's dashboard. We talked about it briefly whenever we were creating a new student account. This is set up in a quadrant system. In the top left-hand corner, the student will see any overdue assignments. So they'll know what they're falling behind on. Anything that is bold and underlined, these are open and available for the student to work on. You'll notice they can't go on and take this quiz until they complete this lesson. If the student does have overdue assignments, they will be duplicated here in the schoolwork. This schoolwork box is basically a copy of the assignments due from their homepage. So again, all of the assignments that have a status of assigned. Upcoming, these are the activities that are coming up for the student in the next 7 days. And then overall progress lets the student know where they stand in each of the courses that they're enrolled in. It tells them the percentage of completion and their current average. So again, anything that's bold and underlined, the student has the ability to go in and complete the assignment. Let's take a look at what a typical lesson looks like for your students. First, they'll have some sort of introduction for the lesson, followed by objectives, and then vocabulary. Now, each of these vocabulary terms has a green horn right next to it. If the student clicks that, then the program will read the word out loud for the student. I'm wearing a headset today, so unfortunately you won't be able to hear the audio, but whenever you go into preview or you're looking at an assignment from the gradebook, you'll be able to hear that same audio, and of course your students will as well. After the vocabulary, there are some games that will help to reinforce those key terms. They're not required for the student to complete the lesson. They're just there to really reinforce those key terms because we know how important vocabulary is. As the student moves into the content of the lesson, they're going to see any number of things, and it's going to vary from course to course and even lesson to lesson. They're obviously going to have some text to read. They might also have some interactive clip art or images like this one here, where if they put their mouse or their cursor over a word, it gives them a little explanation. They might have some dynamic learning activities like this one here. It's a drag and drop where they'll read through some statements and then determine where it falls into, what category. And then they might also see tiny tutors or terrific tutors, which are avatars or teachers explaining the content a little bit in more detail. They might also see links out to other websites, games that quiz them on the information that they've covered. So we try to keep it, we try to keep some variety in there so that they don't get bored with the same thing over and over again. At the end of the lesson, there will be a little bit of a review and then some questions for the student to answer. So I'm going to answer my questions and submit my answer. And I'm just quickly reading through these, and I'm not even reading that one. So you can see it's really easy for the student to navigate. Whenever they click on Submit Answer, it takes them on to the next question. Now here, this is a question or an essay that uses Writer. Remember, we talked about that a little bit earlier. Now, give me 1 second to pull up a writing sample for this question. Okay, so I just put in my response. I'm going to submit my answer. And the program says, hey, you know what? You're all finished. Do you want to submit this lesson? I'm going to click on no, because I want to review what Writer has provided me, what information. I haven't met my required number of words yet. I'm not writing very good here. I'm not meeting my grade level or my readability. And I have a couple of errors. Remember, if I right click on them, I get the suggestions. If I right click on the grammar suggestions, it lets me know the suggestions there as well. So now I'm going to try a different sample. So here is my second attempt at my essay. And again, I'm going to submit my answer. Again, I'm going to click on no. Hey, and look there. I see that I did much better here. I've met my word count. Still not really at my grade level, but I'll let my teacher determine whether or not she thinks he thinks I'm doing a good job. And when I'm all finished with my lesson, then I can submit it. If there was no manual grading required for that activity, then the student would receive immediate feedback. They would get a score back immediately. In this case, because there is a component of manual grading, it just lets the student know, hey, your teacher needs to grade this. When the student clicks OK, it's going to take them back to My Courses, where they're able to enter another assignment. Let's just keep on working in BCIS and go to the next lesson. This time through, I want to show you the features that your students have available to them. Essentially, their toolbox. They can hide the lesson. If they want to quiz themselves and just see the questions, they have that capability. The reference button will be for any time they come across a word that they're not familiar with. They can highlight that word, click the reference button, and the program will provide them with an encyclopedia article for the word. And this truly is more like an encyclopedia versus a dictionary, so not every word will be listed there in reference for them. The teacher note is there if the teacher has left a note for the student about this assignment. I'll show you how to do that when we get back into the teacher mode in a little while. My Notes allows the student to take notes on that particular lesson. So they can click on My Notes and continue to add to it and save as they go on through. So if they wanted to put in the vocabulary, they could do that. And save that as well. Students are also able to initiate a message to their teacher right here from the lesson. So if they have a question, They can plug it in and send that on to their teacher. There's also a translate feature. So if you have any students who are ELL kiddos, they can highlight a passage of text, select from one of 9 languages, and the program will translate the text into the student's native language, so they are able to read the content in their native language. We also have a feature that allows the student to highlight a passage of text and select from one of 4 voices, and the program will read the text to the student in English. Students are also able to print out lessons, and then of course they can submit the lesson as well. One thing that I didn't show you the last time I was going through lessons is this help button. When a student gets to a question and they are struggling a little bit, they need some help or assistance, they can click on help and type in their message. When they click on send, when the message moves from this text box to directly above it, that lets the student know that they have sent the message. We will either get an action in our actions box or a message in our messages box, or both. And I'll go through that actions box in just a bit when we head back into the teacher mode of the program. So I wanted to make sure and show you how the student initiates a help request. All right, I'm going to go back to my home screen, and let's take a look at an assessment. When a student gets ready to take a quiz or a test, they get this little pop-up that says that the test or quiz must be completed once it's started. Do you wish to continue? When the student clicks OK, they'll be taken into the quiz or the test. They'll see one question at a time, just like they do in the lessons. You can see that some of these questions have been skipped, so the student won't have to answer these. Now, I know that little pop-up said that the student had to complete the assessment once it was started, and that's partially true. But I want to make you aware of this little loophole. If the student leaves the assessment and hops back in within 2 minutes, they can pick up right where they left off. So the questions that I had answered are still answered, and I could just pick up right where I left off and continue on. So there's a 2-minute window that the student has to get back into their assessment. So if the power surges or someone walks by their computer and accidentally trips over the power cord or something like that, they're able to pick up right where they left off. Now, after the 2-minute window expires, this is what the student will see. It lets them know that the quiz or the test must be completed once it's started, and only their teacher can unlock this assignment. It asks them to please select one of the following actions, either unlock or submit for a grade. Now, if they hit unlock, it's going to send a message to you, their teacher, in an action in your actions box, where you then can unlock the assignment for them, and they can just pick up and continue working right where they left off. This is a great feature for any student who's not able to complete an assessment item in one class sitting, or if they start it midway through the class and they're not able to get finished. Another great feature for them. Just have them log out without submitting the assessment. When they go to log in the next day, have them hit unlock, and then they could pick up right where they left off. All right, that is all of the ins and outs of the student mode of the program. Let's log out and head back into the teacher mode, where we can wrap up our training today. For this next portion of the training, we're going to focus on monitoring students. And one of the key ways to monitor your students is to take care of your actions box. You've heard me say actions, I don't know how many times, but it's been a lot today. So now I want to show you how to tackle those actions. The first thing I want to show you is how to grade an assignment. So anytime a student completes an activity that has an essay or some sort of manual grading, it'll show up in your actions box as a grade assignment. All you'll need to do is click the link to open up the activity. Does this screen look familiar? This is one of the times that I said, hey, you're going to see this screen several times during the training. Remember back on the gradebook tab? Here it is again. So now we're grading an assignment. And the cool thing about that grade assignment link is it brings you to the very first question that requires your attention, because occasionally there are multiple questions that you'll need to grade. They'll be identified with an asterisk, so you know which ones that you need to take care of. You'll see the points possible that the student can earn. For lessons, quizzes, and tests, the points possible is typically 10. For essays, projects, the points possible is typically 100 points. This is where you will plug in the grade that you feel like the student deserves and update the score. You're going to have some sort of answer key here, and this just says here that the answers are going to vary, but they should explain that they understand the meaning of work ethic. If the answer key is not listed here, or you would really like to see what the student was asked to do, you could always go to show the lesson to see the content or whatever the project was that the student needed to complete if you were grading a project. So know that you have that option. This is the question that the student used writer. Now, from the teacher's perspective, we have access to a little pop-up whenever the grade level or for these icons and for these meters. And because it's not working with the recording software that I'm using, you don't see it on my screen here. But if you were to place your icon over or your cursor over that icon, you would see the expected grade level for that course and then where the student was actually writing. The same would be true for readability. And then you would see a score that is relative to the meter here for the meters. Now, even though this says overall score, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to award the score that it says the student earned. In fact, I want to reiterate the fact that this is not an essay grader. It will never, ever, ever take the place of you. It also lets you know the topic word list down here as well. Now, you're going to see the students' suggestions for spelling and grammar errors. You can right-click on them and see what they should have maybe done a little bit differently, but you won't be able to make any changes there. So after reading through the student's response, you'll provide them with a score here. So maybe I feel like the student got an 8 out of 10. I want to scroll up so that you can see this assignment score here. When I click on update, it automatically updates the assignment score as well. So it gave the student partial credit, 8% or 80%, 8 out of 10, and it updated the assignment score for me too. And now that I'm finished with the grading, I can go back to home or previous. Both will take me back to the same place. Where I did have 8 actions, now I have 7. So as soon as I take care of that action, it's clearing it out of my actions box. Let's do one more grade assignment, this time with a project. So here's a great example that it brings me to the first question that needs my attention, but there are actually 2 that I need to grade. And here's another great example of that this one doesn't really provide me with a good answer key. In fact, really not one at all. So what I can do here is show the lesson and see what the student was supposed to do in this project. Here are the directions for part 1. That's question number 1. And for part 2, hey, and look, there's a teacher only tag. This is what I'm looking for. And then I can take care of the grading. So again, I'll read through the student's response. The points possible for this are 100. I feel like the student did a great job, so I'm going to give them full credit here and update the score. Then I'm going to move over to the second essay and read through and award the score. So maybe in this case they got an 85. Remember, Sally Sue is me, so I have to award myself a good score. All right, and that's it. Grading assignments is as easy as that. Again, it's automatically taking it out of my actions box. Now I have 6. So the next thing I want to talk with you guys about, the next action, is help requested. Anytime the student clicks that help button on a question, you are either going to receive an action in your actions box or a message in your messages window. Sometimes you'll see both, and sometimes you'll only see a message. So for the help requested, again, you're going to click the link, and it opens it up to the question where the student asked for help. The student said, "I don't understand the question." So I might just reply, "You may want to take a look at the content one more time and try again." When you click on reply and your message moves from the text box to directly above it, that's your indicator that the message has been sent on to the student. They will receive a message in their messages box letting them know that you've replied. That's it. Going back home. And I've taken care of that help request. Now, the reason why you may not actually see an action, but you'll see it in the messages, because you will always see a help request in the messages window. You will see a help request in the actions box if the student has asked for help on a question and has not submitted that assignment yet. You won't see an action, a help request action, if the student asks for help on a question and then answers it correctly. You'll just see a message. Or if the student asks for help on a question, but they achieve the threshold on that assignment, again, you would just receive the message, like here where it says help needed, and you can answer the help request from this message. When you open it up the message, you would just simply click the link. Again, it brings me to the question where the student asked for help. They said, "I'm not sure," and I could reply and take care of that help request. Feeling pretty good so far? All right, let's keep moving on. The next one I want to talk with you about is the unlock quiz. Remember, we saw this happen in the student mode where the student wasn't able to complete the assessment in one sitting. So they requested for me to unlock it. All I have to do is click the link. That's it. And the student is able to pick up and continue working right where they left off. The blank essay submitted notification lets you know when a student completes an assignment, but they don't answer the essay questions. So in this case here, the student answered the first 3 questions successfully, but left both of the essays blank. The program automatically graded these essays as a 0, which is why the student received a 60, because they got 3 of the 5 questions correctly. You can do 2 things here. You can do nothing and let the student take the 0 that they earned on those 2 essays, or you could reassign the essay to the student. You just simply click on the reassign button for question number 4 and the reassign button for question number 5. When the student goes back to BCIS, they will have to complete just these 2 questions here for assignment 3. Anytime I reassign something to the student, I like to leave them a teacher note. You heard me talk about this briefly in the student mode, but this is a way for you to communicate with the student about this specific assignment. So think of it like a sticky note that you place on a worksheet or something like that. So I might say, "I noticed you didn't do the essays. I've reassigned them to you. Please complete them." And save it. So when the student opens up their lesson, this teacher note will appear right smack dab in the middle of the screen, and they'll know exactly what they need to do for that assignment. That's optional. Like I said, you don't have to do it. You could let the student take those 0s. The next item I want to talk about, assignment blocked. Anytime a student reaches an assignment that has been blocked, either by you or by the program, you're going to receive an action that says assignment blocked. So if you had elected to block tests or block quizzes when you enrolled the student into their course, then you're going to see this action pop up from time to time. So all you need to do is click the link. It's going to navigate you over to the Gradebook tab, where it will open up the course and open up the unit for you. All you'll need to do is uncheck the box next to the or underneath the column blocked. That would make the test available for the student so they can get working on that assessment. Okay, going back home. Just one more action type to tackle with you, and that's the view blocked assignment. And I saved this one for the end because it's the only tricky one. Now, this view blocked assignment will appear if you have checked that block progress whenever you have enrolled students into courses, meaning if they are not able to achieve the threshold in the number of attempts that you've given them, the program blocks them from moving forward in the course until you unblock the next activity for the student. So the first step, it's a 3-step process. If I didn't say that already, it's a 3-step process to remove this action. All of the other ones, they've been clearing out automatically for you. This one you have to do manually. So the first step is to view the blocked assignment. The student had asked for help on this one. And you could do a couple of things here. They earned a 30 on this activity. You could reassign the questions the student answered incorrectly if you wanted to. You could even reassign the lesson as a whole if you choose to. The items in this box up here, this dark gray rectangle, these apply to the activity or the assignment as a whole. These buttons down here apply to the individual questions. So if you click assign, everything that the student had completed in that assignment will be wiped clean. They would start over from square one. Or you can do nothing. You can let the student take the 30% that they earned on that activity. The next step is to use the Go-To button and head to the gradebook. You want to make note of the course the student is enrolled in, this case biology, unit 4. So I'm heading over to the gradebook, and I'm going to open up the biology course and open up unit 4. And here is the activity that's been blocked. I need to unblock the next activity so the student can continue working. That is step 2. The last step is just to scroll up to the top of this screen and click on Action Required. You're going to check the box next to the item that has blocked failed attempts, and you're going to mark it as red. That will remove it from your actions box because this Action Required tab is essentially your actions box, but it's just kind of hanging out over here on the gradebook. So it's the same thing. There's a manual grading. If I go home, there's a grade assignment. Okay? And you'll notice that that view blocked assignment has now been removed. So the 3-step process on that, you're going to view the assignment to determine what you want to do with it. Reassign just the questions, reassign the entire assignment, or do nothing. Step 2, go to the gradebook, unblock the next activity. Step 3, scroll up to the top of the gradebook screen, click on Action Required, mark the item as red, and it will be cleared from your actions box. Again, you're only going to see that happen if you checked the box for block progress, okay? All right, we have successfully tackled actions. I think that is the first key component of monitoring students. And remember, we want you to clear out this actions box every single day. That's what's ensuring your students' grades are up to date and accurate. Now let's head over to assignment alerts. This is where we'll do the second portion of monitoring students. The Assignment Alerts tab is definitely one of my favorite tabs because it makes it really easy for you to see how your students are performing on the work they're doing right now. So on Assignment Alerts, you can see a student's progress from today through the past 7 days. For your students, or if you're a super teacher, you could also see for all students. So you're going to see here the student who's been working, the course they've been working in, the title of the activity, what type of assignment it is, the campus, the activity symbol, I'll come back to that in just a minute, the date that it was submitted, the status of that assignment, the number of attempts the student made on the activity, and the score that they earned. Now, I personally like to filter this list. First, by overdue. I want to see when students are falling behind. And I can see that Sally Sue, she's starting to fall off pace in algebra. So I know that that's a place where I would want to intervene and say, hey, Sally, I noticed that you're starting to fall behind in algebra. What's going on? What can we do to get you back on pace? So this is a great place for you to see if your students are staying on track or if they're falling off pace. The next thing I might take a look at, but not typically, is reassigned. That's this little swirly arrow here. This is any time that either I reassign an assignment to the student or if the program reassigns the activity to the student, like if you give them 2 chances on lessons or 2 attempts on lessons and they fail their first attempt, you would see the reassigned next to that course, or I'm sorry, next to that assignment. Or if you've unlocked an assessment for the student. This was that quiz that I unlocked, so it's considering it reassigned, even though the student only has had 1 attempt on it. The next thing I'm going to take a look at are graded assignments. This is something that I'm definitely going to see every day. I'm going to take a look at every day. And what I'm really looking for is the number of attempts and the score the student earned. And anytime I see a score /max, or I'm sorry, a number of attempts /max, like here and here, these are the things that are going to draw my attention because that's an indicator to you that the student did not achieve the threshold in the number of attempts that you've given them. And so they essentially failed that activity. There is no action you have to complete on this tab, on the Assignment Alerts tab. But it makes it easy for you if you do want to take action. So for these items where a student was not successful, you can do 3 things. The first thing is nothing. They're going to take that 29.6% that they earned on that quiz, and that will be their grade. The second option is to reassign the assignment to the student as a whole. Remember, anytime you reassign the entire assignment, it wipes the slate clean. The student starts with question 1 and has to answer everything over again. The exception to that would be essays. The program won't wipe an essay, so the student could just edit what they have in there without having to start all over. To do that, you'll just change the status from graded to assigned. It's as easy as that. And now the student will have to complete that quiz or test or whatever it may be over again. Your third option, in the instance where a student was not successful, is to go into the activity by clicking on the link. Hey, does this look familiar? We're seeing that screen again from the gradebook. Here it is. We also saw it whenever we were grading assignments. Now we see it again. So what your third option would be is to just reassign the questions the student answered incorrectly. So I'm just clicking on all of the red or the pink boxes and then clicking the reassign button. If I ever get to a true false or a question that only has 2 answer choices, I won't reassign those, like in this case here, because hello, that's a little easy for the kiddo. So these last 2 I won't reassign. Again, might leave that kiddo a teacher note, letting them know I'm giving you another opportunity to be successful. Try again. Okay. All right, easy as that. So I'm going to go back to previous, wherever I was on my assignment alerts, and go back to graded. And one other thing that I want to show you that you have the ability to do here if you choose to is you can overwrite a grade if you need to. And again, you can do this either here or either on from the actions box or on the gradebook tab. You'll just go into the assignment. You have the option to update the score, and you can put in the score that the student earned. So, maybe they took a quiz in math and they just bombed it, and you sat down and had a little tutorial session with them and said, okay, here are 5 problems. Show me your work and turn it back in. And they do. And now instead of reassigning something in the program, you might decide that you're going to update the score in the program to reflect their new score. And again, anytime I do something like this, where I'm overwriting a score, I like to leave a teacher note. And instead of communicating with a student in this case, it's more of a communication with myself, letting me know that the student showed mastery on paper. Please see student file. That way, if anybody ever came back to audit the program, I would have record of what I did for this student. And again, the teacher note is made visible for the student, so you don't want to put anything in there that you wouldn't want the student to see. But it's a great way to keep track of the things that you're doing for the kiddo. All right, going back to assignment alerts. Just a reminder on this page, there's nothing you have to do, but it's a great place for you to visit daily to see how students are performing on their assignments right now. It also makes it very easy for you to reassign activities rather than having to go to the gradebook, search for the student, open the course, open the unit. You can do all of that right here on assignment alerts. Can you believe we only have 2 more tabs to cover? Woohoo! Let's go over to reports. Now I'm going to run through one report with you today, but all of the other reports will generate following the same process. So I feel confident if I show you how to do one, you'll be able to run all of the other reports successfully on your own following the same process. So let's take a look at the detailed student grading report. This report will show you all of the work that a student has completed for the time frame that you've selected. So the first step is to select your time frame. You can either select one term or multiple terms. You can search for a term if you want to look for something specific, or you can put in your own custom start and end date. I'm just going to go through the 2013-2014 school year. The next step is for you to select your users. So again, you could batch select all of your students. You could run a search for a specific campus. Like if I want to run a report for just my high school students, I could do that. See how handy those student ID and campus IDs can be for you? You can run reports just on a certain group of students. You could also run reports for archived or on hold students by changing the status drop-down menu here. I'm going to run a search for Miss Sally. Check the box next to her name. And then the next step is to select enrollments. Be sure you click this Show Refresh button. It just runs a quick search to find all of the courses that Sally is enrolled in. If you want to see a report for each course, you'll batch select all of them. You could also choose to see reports for any archived courses that Sally has been enrolled in. And you can also run a report based on that reason code. So all of the archived courses with a status of complete. So you're able to do that as well. Whoops. I'm going to go back to active. And select all of them. The last step is to select how you want to view the information, either in a web-based file format which will come in handy if you're ever emailing these reports out to parents. We found the majority of our parents aren't checking email on their computer anymore. They're actually using their smartphones. So having this file type will allow them to view the file without having to have an app to view the Excel spreadsheet or the PDF. The CSV is an Excel spreadsheet. So if you need to manipulate the data in any capacity to create a pivot table or pivot charts, you could use that CSV file. And then, of course, the PDF is the most common. It's what I'll share with you right now. All right. So here's the report. You have a great header at the top of the page. We're going to see the student's name and the first course. We'll see all of the lessons and projects, quizzes, and tests the student has completed for that time frame. I'll see when they started the activity and when they completed it. I will also see the hours and the minutes they took to complete that activity and the score they earned. Now, I want to let you know that you might see discrepancy between the started and completed versus the time. So the started is when the student starts the assignment for that first attempt. Completed is when they submit it on their final attempt. So if they start an assignment on Friday but don't finish it to Monday, you might see a weekend time frame here, and then the actual time might only be 30 minutes or 45 minutes. So just be aware of that. You're going to see a unit average for each unit and then an overall course average as well. And then we're moving into the next course where we'll see that same information. And then we're moving into BCIS. If you run a report for multiple students, they will each print on their own page. And I want you to be mindful that the reason why this little asterisk is hanging out up here is because these are reporting in Mountain Standard Time. Anytime you see a time in the program, it's reporting in Mountain Standard Time. So just be mindful of that, okay? We're not able to change it at this time, so I want you to know to account for it whenever you're taking a look at these times. So that's the detailed student grading. Now let's go back to the reports page. You'll follow those same simple instructions for each report. But let me quickly go through and tell you what each of the other reports will generate for you. The course percentage complete report, this will show you how we're tracking the progress for a student, the progress bar. It will let you know the number of activities for the course and the number that have been completed. So you know exactly how much is left to complete for the student. The faculty progress will be able to be generated by super teachers. This will show a teacher's to-do list or your actions box to make sure that you're current, meaning that your actions box is clear. It will also let that super teacher know when those action items came in, so it might be an opportunity to coach if you're letting things hang out for a little bit longer than a day or two. The login and log out times will show you exactly that. When a user has logged in, when they logged out, and the session duration. The student activity daily breakdown will show you where a student is spending their time every day. So if I have a student who's enrolled in math and language arts and I run this report for Monday through Friday, I will see on Monday they were in math for 55 minutes, they were in language arts for 30 minutes. On Tuesday, they were in math for 47 minutes and in language arts for an hour and 3 minutes. So it breaks it down by time, by course, and by day. The student activity summary will simply take that same information and just add it all together. So that same student who's enrolled in math and language arts, and I run the report for the same time frame, Monday through Friday, I will see a total time in math of 5 hours and 15 minutes and a total time for language arts of 4 hours and 47 minutes. The student lesson plan is the student's pacing guide. This report will show you what a student should complete each day in each course in order to finish those courses by the end date for the time frame that you've selected. And the student unit grades will show you the unit average for any unit that is completed or is currently being worked in. It will also show you the overall course average as well. So those are all of the reports. Again, I feel very confident after seeing how to run through the detailed student grading that you will be able to run all of these reports on your own. Well, there's only one more tab to cover, and it is courses. So let's head there next. There are some really cool things that you can do on the courses tab. When you come here, you're going to see all of the courses. That means all of the Ignitia created courses and any custom courses on your site. All standard means all Ignitia created courses. Custom are custom courses that have been created by other users on your site. My courses are the courses that you have authored. And archived are any courses that, or any custom courses that are no longer available for enrollment. Now I'm going to hop back to all standard. What I really want to show you here is that each one of these courses has an eyeball icon. This is your preview icon, so you can preview any one of the courses listed here. So I can run a search for a course, click on the preview icon to open it up, click on the unit to open the unit title, and then I could click on the lesson to preview the lesson. There are lots of ways that you can use that preview component as a way to incorporate whole group instruction into your courses, where you would pull up a lesson or a project or something that you feel would support the instruction that you're doing in your day-to-day classroom, and then show it to your entire class. I mean, talk about getting the biggest bang for your buck when it comes to using this program as a resource. I think really being able to preview all of these courses will come in so handy for you. You could also print out these lessons if you wanted to, if a student was absent, to get them caught up. You could even go and preview quizzes and tests to help revitalize your quiz and test bank. So I want you to really think outside the box when it comes to previewing these courses. You can really use all of this information for lots of different things. Also, I want you to think outside the box in terms of, yeah, your student may be taking Algebra 1, but if they're struggling on slope, then perhaps you want to pull up something in pre-algebra to help support the student with that. So I could go to functions and open up the lesson on slope, and maybe it takes it back a notch for the student and really helps them to develop that concept or skill that they might have missed out on. So again, just think outside the box, be creative. You have access to all of these different courses. Really use them. And just to keep in mind, you guys as teachers, you don't take up a license. So if you are previewing a course and you decide to project that onto a white screen or onto a smartboard, you're not jeopardizing the licenses that you have reserved for your other students who are working through the program. So I think that is really cool. You can also create custom courses. Now, I'm not going to go into all of the details about the how-to, but I want to let you know that it's an option for you. You can, again, be really creative. You can rearrange the courses that are already existing in the program so they fall in line with your scope and sequence. You can create hybrid courses so they kind of fuse together maybe the algebra and the pre-algebra courses into one. You could even create content-specific courses. The possibilities here are limitless, and it really helps you to take the program as it stands now and truly customize it to fit the needs of your school and your students. Now, I'm sure your brain is on Ignitia overload right about now, and it should be. And you're probably saying to yourself, Erin, where can I go for some help? Well, that's what I'm going to share with you now. Down at the very bottom of your screen, there is a link titled Help. This will probably be your best friend. Here, you're going to have access to our tech support and customer service numbers. Both of these teams are stellar, and they're going to be able to answer any question that you have. If they aren't able to answer that question, they're going to be able to get you in touch with a trainer who will be able to answer that question. You also have access to our email support and our training support site. So when you click that link there, again, you'll have access to email support and our tech support, resources. So here you'll have all of the guides for the program. So full user guides for each mode, as well as guides for some of the other features that you'll find in the program as well. And you'll have some supply list as on that page for you too. Quick start guides for each mode of the program, the system requirements, and our on-demand tutorials. That's probably where you're watching this one right now. But there's a few others on there that I encourage you to take a peek at. There's also some that are available for your students. This would be a great orientation for your kiddos before they start working in the program. Well, I hope what you've discovered is that you are not alone. And if you do have questions, that's what we're here for. We want to ensure that you have the best experience when you work with Ignitia, and we're happy to help. Thank you so much for watching our Basic Teacher On Demand video. I hope you are excited. I hope you learned a lot, and I hope you feel prepared to start your journey with Ignitia.